Welcome CSC 103 to exercise 15, our intro to HTML, CSS, and eventually some JavaScript, but we're just going to work in HTML and a little CSS right now. It's web development languages that we're going to work with. And right now you're looking at a sample from last fall, and it has a fall image and it has fall colors. So all we're going to do is make a headline, a subheadline, and two paragraphs. This paragraph is basically a couple words. This paragraph is a bunch of words, and it's placeholder paragraph, so we can actually just put it in there. We don't have to type it. And then we're just going to put an image on our page just to work a little bit with HTML, which is the structure and the content, and CSS, which gives it its color, its layout, its margin, and its background color, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to do that now. So this is what we're going to do. It's very simple, basic introduction. So I'm going to close this tab up. This is our preview window where we see our website, and then we're going to go back to our Replit window. Now you've worked with Replit with Python, so it should be familiar working with this, and this is a previous one. So I'm going to start this from scratch. So I'm going to go back to my main repels, and again, this one was from the fall, so I'm going to make a new one. So remember, this hamburger menu here kind of opens up your little menu here of repels. And also, if you see any other videos, it tells you to go into your account to change the theme. You can go down here to change the theme to dark and light. I saw another video and I was telling people to go into the account and all this kind of stuff, where you can do that, but it's a lot easier just to go here. So whatever theme you like. I'm going to work in a dark theme right now, so I'll leave it there, but it's very easy to do it there. But just remember, this menu comes out like that, and you can create a new repel here. You can create one here. You can look at your repels here, but I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to hit create. Okay, from here on out, everything recorded will be from fall 23, so that it's kind of up to date in Replit, because there's always those little changes that kind of throw you off. So when you get to this create a repel, I call them repels area, you're going to look for HTML, CSS, and JS. If you don't see it, just start typing HTML, and that should come up. So it's going to be HTML, CSS, and JS. That's going to be for web development. So click on that as your template. And then over here, you're going to put a title of your repel. So just call that 15 dash, you could call it HTML dash CSS, and then just put your initials. I'll just put CJH since I'm using this account right now. So I'm just going to put that in there and then create repel. So that's your template. That's the title of your repel. And I'll put create repel. And one thing I just want to point out as this opens up here, some people were claiming they had to purchase Replit. You don't have to purchase it. I don't know if there's something on a phone where they're trying to get you to download the app. There is a Replit app, but if you create an account on the web first, then you can just log in with your account name in the app. If you get an app, you should never have to pay for anything, and don't upgrade anything. I mean, unless you want to, but everything should be free. And by default, they should always be set up. If I go to this little drop down here, they should always be set up for public, because some people have sent me some links and I can't see them. And I go into their repels and I don't see any. And they could be set up to private. I think they're private if you pay for an account, which, you know, I don't care who looks at my repels. So make sure it's public, and that I'm just looking at it when I go to this little drop down here. Now, when I started this off here, I have basically my web view over here. There is a shell down here. We don't have to do anything with the shell. There's web view here, and we're not working with a console like we were with Python. So that's all we have right now. In fact, most of the time we're going to open this up in a new tab. And you can do this right away. You can click here, open it in a new tab, and it'll say Hello World. So this is the preview tab. This is the way you want to see it. And it says Run on Replit. We're going to get rid of that. And this is your code tab. This is your preview tab. So instead of just previewing it here, you could preview it up here. And again, if you close this, here it is, open a new tab. And this is the title of the web page, which just says Replit. We're going to change that. And this is the only content on it right now. So when you go back to your coding area here, I'm going to move this over because we're not really going to use this much, but I like to keep this out a little bit just in case I want to stretch it out, because once you close these up, it's kind of a pain to bring them back a little bit. You can use these little three dots here and say add pane on top and bottom and stuff, but sometimes they can be a little confusing. So I'm just going to keep it out and just move it over and kind of minimize it over there. You can bring it over all the way, but that's fine for now. So I could see more code. Remember, you could also hide your files over here, but I want you to see the files. I want you to see that you have, let me see what's here. I'm going to hide hidden files because you may not see all these. Let me hide hidden files. And that's all you should see. I think I had that turned off for some other project I was working on, but you should probably just see these. Index.html, which is this page right here. Now that's your default homepage. And what I mean is any directory or folder that you go in, a web server will always go to index.html first. That's the default homepage. Sometimes they had different names, but 99.9% of the time, index.html or index.php is going to be the homepage that a web server will go to. So it'll look for that first. That's why when you go to a website, you don't have to type in index.html, but if you go to any other pages, sometimes you have to type in something else after the name. But right now, this will default to the homepage. There's a script.js, which we're not going to use right now. And here it's actually linking to it, and it's showing that little thing on the bottom. Now I'm going to wipe out everything between the body tags. And I just want to point out that we have elements here. We have our doc type is our intro kind of element here that's indicating to web servers that this is an HTML page, and it's HTML5 and above. And then there's our opening and closing HTML tags, and together they're called an element. The HTML element, and then inside the HTML element, there's a head section, a head element, and these are things that you don't really see other than the title. Now, you could go in here in the title, and you could just put CSC 103, and you could put your name. I'll just put my name, Homa. You could just do that for now, or something else. That's fine for now. That'll just be the title that shows up here in Replit. Matter of fact, if I go here and I refresh, that updates, but this is gone because I took everything out of the body. So there's nothing in my body right now. And typically, we're going to indent things so we know what's inside of something else. So we kind of know what the parent is, what the child, because these are elements that are inside the head element, because it starts here and it ends here, and these are all inside. Everything's inside HTML, including the head, including the body, and then it closes there. These technically could be indented, but they don't have them indented right now. But we can indent things eventually. So you always want to make sure there's a closing HTML. And a lot of times, and I'm saying not all the time, elements will have an opening tag with the less than and greater than sign, and a closing tag with a less than and greater than sign and a slash in it. That's the closing tag. That says, okay, this is where it ends. This is where body starts. This is where body ends. This is where the head starts. This is where the head ends. This is where the title starts and the title ends, and so on. And this color coding, get used to this, because when there's an error, you'll kind of look at the color coding to know when something's wrong, because you won't get an error code like in Python, because it doesn't know what you're trying to do. You'll just know that something doesn't look right, and you'll have to look at the code here a little bit. And this line right here, line 8, is linking to this page, style.css. And right now it says height 100, width 100. We could get rid of this, really. You don't have to put anything in there right now. We're going to put styles in there, but we don't need that default. But we can keep the link to it. So you can keep this right here. This is a link to that so that we don't have to put styles in this page. We'll just kind of keep them separate over here. And the JavaScript, we're not using it right now, so you can go to these 3 dots here and actually delete the file. And yes, delete it. So that you just have an index file and a style file, style.css. And they're different languages, so you're going to type them differently, which is a little more confusing than working in Python, I think, and other people think too. But what's nice about it is you can make changes and you see these visual results happen, once you put something in there. So let's go back to our index page right now. And the first thing you're going to do here is we're going to work in our body here. And if you hit return right after body, you can see it'll indent it for you. And if you set up your preferences, which were user settings, I'll bring these out. I think that's where they have them. Indentation 4. I have that on 4. You might have set that up for Python, but if not, put it on 4. It makes a little more of an indent. You can tab to use that indent right there. And again, when you're done here, you could X out of that, but that's all I had right there. So I had it set up, so that's why when I click here, it's indenting a little more than they are by default. So you can even highlight these and tab them over and then kind of backspace a little. That kind of lines them up. Sometimes they'll show a line there. So that's kind of where our indent is, where we're here. So they're all kind of lined up. Not a big deal, but it looks better and it's easier to find things when things are aligned better. So all we're going to do first is we're going to do a headline, a subheadline, and 2 paragraphs. So that's pretty easy. And we could use something called emit, which is a built-in shortcut. So instead of typing all this stuff, which can be a pain because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to forget things and forget slashes and all kinds of stuff. Not that you won't make mistakes, but what you can do is just type this. Watch how easy this is. H1, and then hit your tab key. Boom, there it is. Now it's saying hello from Replit. It's auto-filling in here. You're not going to put hello from, oh, you are going to put hello from Replit. But I'm going to type it in even if it doesn't. I'm just going to go here and then click in here, and I'm going to type hello from Replit because I think that's what we do in the past, in my past videos. Hello, we'll spell it right. Hello from Replit. That's an H1. So you don't have to save anything. So when you go here and you refresh it, it should say hello from Replit. That's it. And then we're going to make a subheadline. Now this is easy. We'll just hit a return. I'll type H2, and that's going to make an H2 element once I hit tab. There it is. And inside here, I'm just going to put CSC 103, and I'll put fall 2023. So H2 is a subheadline. It should look a little smaller. Let's refresh here, and it does. It looks a little bit smaller than that. So that's just kind of general HTML structure that was set up for years and years to do that. Now we can customize that, but for right now we'll do that. Then we're going to put two paragraphs. And we're going to put one paragraph that says P. Now that makes a paragraph element. I'll hit tab. And I'll put this is a paragraph. Nothing exciting here, just telling you that it's a paragraph and a period. So again, this is your content, this is the opening tag, this is the closing tag, and this is the first paragraph element, which is inside body. So it's a child. Paragraph is a child of the body element. These are all children of the body elements. And then we'll make another paragraph, and I'll do P, and I'll hit tab. Now this time inside of P, I'm going to go here and type lorem 30. Now you can do it all at once, but I'm just doing lorem 30 after doing it. So I'm putting in lorem 30 and I'll hit tab. And it makes basically a 30-word paragraph with lorem ipsum, which is like a placeholder kind of language, kind of this Latin Greek language. I'm not sure what it is, but we've used it in design for years. Now, another way to do this, even if I delete this, you don't have to delete it, but you could put P and you could put like a caret like that and then do lorem 30 and hit tab. And then it'll do those all at once. And you could do a lot of this emit, like a whole bunch of things all at once. So those are our first four elements, H1, H2, a P, and a P. Now if we go here and refresh, we have an H1, an H2, a P, and a P. So that's pretty easy, just basic HTML. But if you've never worked with it, you want to realize too that there's kind of a default kind of setting here. There's a little bit of a margin. I think it's like 6 pixels or something going around. And then there's also space before and after each paragraph. There's kind of a default there that we're going to override when eventually we start using some styles. But right now that's kind of a default. So that spacing in there is kind of built into HTML to start, unless we override it. All right, what we're going to do next is we're going to put an image in our page. And we're going to put it here after the P. Now notice the P goes back to the margin. That's okay, because it doesn't keep everything lined up like a real indent. It just indents here, and then it goes back to the margin if there's a couple lines there. So I'm going to hit enter or return, and we're going to put an image in our page. And there's something coming up here. You may see things come up by default. Just ignore them. I'm just going to type img, and I'll hit tab. Now, what that does is it puts two attributes. These things are attributes. There's a source attribute, and there's an opening and closing quote, and there's an alt attribute, which is an opening closing quote. Now, for the alt, that just means if the image doesn't load, you could put something in here like fall image, like that. So if the image doesn't load, it'll just say that's where your fall image is supposed to go. And if there's nothing here, nothing should load. So if you don't have anything in here, it won't load. So if I go up here and I refresh, you see, it says fall image because it didn't load. There's no image to load, and that's kind of like showing that it's missing. You'll see that if something doesn't load correctly. So that just shows you what didn't load. The fall image didn't load, so fall image pick. So it's just an indicator to also to people who have disabilities, for ADA, things like that. So if they're using a screen reader, it says, you know, there's an image there. They know it's an image and it's not supposed to be text. So you could even put, well, fall image is fine. So we're going to put an image address in here because we don't have an address. Now, you would normally put images inside your files. You could have a folder here and called img and kind of link to them there. But we're actually going to link to something online. So we're going to use an online image. So let's go find one. So we'll just use one online. We don't have to copy one down and save it and put it in here. So I'm just going to go here and I'll search for fall image because it's fall. And in the spring, we do a spring image. That's why I always have to re-record these. So let me just go to images. Now, a couple things just to be aware of when you do these is the size, because we're going to want to resize them. And make sure at the end they have a JPEG, because sometimes if they don't have JPG at the end, they don't show up. So I'm just going to look for anything here. And it doesn't really matter. We're just putting an image on a page. Here, that looks fine. There's water there. And this is 2000 by 1200, so it's pretty big, and we're going to make it like 500. So sometimes we'll look for something a little smaller, but that's fine. It'll be gigantic when we first put it there. Ooh, that's a nice one. Let me check that one. That one's 670. That's a little smaller. Maybe I'll use that because that's a little bit smaller. Although it's taller, I wanted something a little bit wider, but maybe I'll try that. And again, you could use the bigger one as well, but we're still going to make it smaller. So what I want to do first is I want to right-click on this. And instead of copying image, because we're not going to paste it into a document, you can't copy the image. You have to copy the image address. Now, you won't see it copied. It'll just be copied. And where you're going to paste it is you're going to go right in here, the source. This is the image. This is the source attribute, which tells you where and what the image is. It'll tell you where it is and what the name of it is. So if it was in here, it would say it was just in here. It'll say like / whatever fall image. Now, I don't know what it's called, what the name is, or anything like that. So I'm just going to paste it. I'll do Command V on Windows. You do Control V. And there's the full address. So that's telling you it's coming from the web. Now, it does have a JPEG at the end, which is good. So you want to make sure there's a JPEG or a ping or something at the end. Sometimes if they don't have them, it doesn't show up. So another thing I want to point out here is when you use these attributes, there's always a space in between them. So there's the quotes around the address and the image. And then there's quotes around this, and then there's a space in between the attribute. You don't want to have it like that. You always want to have a space there, even though the color's not getting messed up there. You want to always have spaces between the different attributes. And there could be a whole bunch. Another one, let's put one in. Well, actually, let's wait. Let's just view it first. We'll refresh it. There it is. Now, it's pretty big. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the width attribute so it's 500. So it'll be a little bit smaller. We don't need it this gigantic here. So we're going to go here and put width. And we'll put equals, and then we'll put a quote, and it should put, you can even put 2 quotes, and then a space. That way you're separating the attributes here. They're showing up in blue. The actual name or whatever the value is that's going in here. And with HTML, you have attribute value, and with CSS, we're going to have property value. They kind of mean the same thing, but this is the attribute. So we're going to put in 500. And we only have to put 500. It will default to PX. Even if we just put PX in here, I don't know if we need PX or not. Let me just double check. I think we could just put 500 because that's the only thing it reads when you put a width number in there. But let's just see. We'll try it out. Okay, that worked. So we put 500 pics. That worked. If you didn't have PX in there and you went here and you refreshed it, it'll do the same thing. So PX or not PX, I'll put PX in there because we're going to use PX like that when we use CSS. And that means pixels. And also, you don't want to have a space there. If I did that, I don't think it'll work. Oh, it is still working. But typically, you're not going to do that for CSS. So try to keep a space out of there. Keep it like that, 500 px. So that made the width 500 pix. And that's about it for now. So that's kind of what we're starting with. Let me refresh it again. And it looks okay. So again, this is the title. H1, H2, paragraph, and then we have an image. And again, it's IMG, and SRC means source. It's not SCR like script, it's SRC. Some people mess that up. They type it in there and it gets messed up. And if you're missing a quote or something, just like that, it'll get messed up. You'll go here, you screw up a quote, refresh it, it doesn't work. What's going on? I'll get an email. It's not showing up, and I'll go here and, look at your colors. You're seeing something's wrong here. Why is that blue? The attributes should be blue. So they will kind of clue you in that something's wrong. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll put my quote here. And I want to use a double since I was using doubles in here. You can use singles and doubles, but make sure they're the same. And now the colors look okay. So this is how the colors should look. If I go here, it should be okay again. So again, you won't see that alt tag unless something's wrong or unless someone's using a screen reader where it's basically converting HTML into text. So the last thing we'll do here before we get to part 2, we just did generic HTML, very easy stuff here. We put a width attribute in here. Now we could do that in CSS and target some things a little bit differently. Some of our design work we're going to do in CSS. But for right now, you can put attributes in here. You can even put CSS in here, which you don't want to do. But we can look at it both ways. You see right now how this thing's going across the page? Now that gets smaller. That'll kind of wrap as we get smaller. But if you didn't want it going across the page, if you wanted this text to kind of end here, you could change the body. You could target the body element and say make it 500 pixels, the same as the image. And everything will kind of wrap in that area. Now, one thing you could do is you could go into body and you could put style equals, you could put a style attribute, and you could put width and a colon and 500 and then a px and a semicolon. Now, what that does, body style equals, what that does is it does an inline style. And sometimes we do that in My Warn and stuff because you can't do external CSS. What that should do, if I did it correctly, let's see if I did it correctly. I did it correctly. So that's an inline style. That's right inside the tag. That gets confusing and hard to follow. So we're not going to do that. I'm just showing you that you can do that. We're going to do it somewhere else, and let's do it right now. Because we're already linking to style.css. There it is. We already have that. What we're going to do is we're going to start doing some CSS. We'll put a little background color in there, and we'll put a little margin, and we'll put a width. So anyway, that's the end of part 1. We'll get back to part 2 and just finish up a little bit of this with our intro to HTML and CSS.